clinch it in overtime. Brady can shot, breakaway shoots, scores!
All right, everyone, we are back with another great interview with Wayne Scanlan of Sportsnet. Wayne, great to have you on. Thank you for joining.
Nice to be here, Brendan. Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, the good news stops right there. The other day, Josh Norris. Yeah, exactly. Long-term injury for Josh Norris. He might be out for the entire year. How big of a loss is this for Ottawa?
Well, it's big. I mean, I think first and foremost, Brandon, you just want the player to get well. I mean, this is a guy at age 23. He's already had a couple of shoulder injuries. He had shoulder surgery in 2019 when he got hurt at the World Junior Tournament. So you want to make sure that he can get healthy and stay healthy and be a part of this team long term. I mean, let's face it. He's got an 8-year contract. He could be a part of the Sens future for a long time, and this might, hopefully be a blip on the radar screen when it's all said and done. But right now, I guess the good news out of this, Brandon, is that the team is deeper than it's been during this entire rebuild, right? They're more comfortable. Some people think Shane Pinto has already passed Josh Norris on the depth chart. You can argue that.
We'll talk about that later for sure.
You talk about that. You talk about Claude Giroux coming in. What a great signing that was in the offseason. Claude has been a career centerman. Currently lined up at the wing. He's a guy that could slide in there. They signed Derek Brassard as a veteran alternative and a guy that, was a healthy scratch for, until Josh got hurt. He steps in on Monday and plays a big role in a win over Dallas. So they're just so much better prepared. They're deeper to handle a setback like this than they would have been.
Absolutely. And I think you really touched on all the points I wanted to bring up there. I mean, especially with Claude Giroux, consistently a top 15 face-off win centerman in the National Hockey League. It would really make the most sense if Derek Brassard doesn't really stick long-term with DeBrincat and Giroux, to move Giroux to the middle and maybe put a guy like a Joseph or whatever there on the second wing. He's such a versatile player. But also, like you mentioned, Brassard, fantastic opening game for him this season. I was at the game on Monday against Dallas. Beautiful top shelf goal for Brass. So like you said, Ottawa has a lot of options. And going back to what you said, I mean, Shane Pinto, 5 goals in 5 straight games. Before getting injured last year, looked fantastic. He's looking even better this year, like a new player, frankly. Looked like he never got injured to begin with. It's unbelievable what he's been able to do. Ottawa is very, very deep at center. But, I have to wonder, Ridley Grieg, obviously he's dealing with that injury. He's been dealing with a lot of injuries over the last couple of years, sort of similar to Josh Norris. But do you think there's a possibility that Ridley Grieg gets called up here to Ottawa anytime soon?
I wouldn't say anytime soon, Brandon. I think he played last night. It was his first game since coming back from injury. So let's let him get settled in to his pro career. Let's let him get healthy. He might need to get maybe a little bit bigger and stronger. You look at guys like Mark Kastelic and how he's developed, a couple of years in the pros and rewarded with a new contract. Ridley Grieg, let's give him a bit more time. I think because of the options that they have and that we've already discussed, just touched on them at least, there's no need to rush Ridley Grieg up here. Let's let him get back, get healthy, and get playing in the AHL, and the time will come when it'll be his turn to be called up.
Just do exactly what you did with Drake Batherson and Josh Norris. I mean, I say this all the time. I know we are, Sens fans, we're impatient. We want to see these players in immediately. I'm one of those guys. I mean, I'd love to see Ridley Grieg tearing it up in the NHL. I think he could right now, but it never hurts to keep your players a little long-term in the AHL just to get a little bit more development. It always helps, refine their game to different elements that they're kind of missing. It never hurts. And I think the Senators since the Curtis Lazar situation, where we draft him first round, and then after that, he's put on the 4th line, stunts his development, not good at all. So I don't think they want to do that again. So really great for sure. I can see definitely being in the AHL for a good amount of time, especially since his first game was last night. But, another option would be, hey, Bo Horvat might be on the table here, as a trade candidate. Do you think Ottawa brings in another forward to supplement their top 6?
Well, again, that's something they don't need to worry about right now, but it's certainly something that could be on the horizon. The cap room is there, but I see that as maybe something, DJ Smith said the other day when we asked him about Brassard and can he step in, he says, let's give it 10 games or so. Let's wait a bit to see if he can do that full time? He did it for one night. Can he dial it in and bring that every night, or do they have to go to other options?
Yeah.
And maybe it's just a matter of moving Brassard in the lineup, but whether they need outside help, are there further injuries down the road? How is the team playing? Are they in the mix for a playoff spot? Are they already in a playoff spot? It's interesting though to think about this team. They're not going to be sellers at the deadline anymore. I just don't see that happening. So they're going to be adding some piece. Now, is it more of a depth defenseman or a top four defenseman that can help them in a playoff push, or is it going to be a centerman because they're still trying to fill a hole vacated by Josh Norris? Time will tell, but I think that's way off in the distance at this point.
Well, look, when we brought in Derek Brassard off that PTO to that 1-year deal, I said it like what you just said there in that video. I mean, look, Derek Brassard has so much experience in the National Hockey League. He's played top 6 minutes for practically his entire career. And a player like that is valuable as a depth player because you kind of, can move him throughout the lineup. I mean, if he's not performing, you don't even have to acquire a forward. You can just move Shane Pinto up potentially, move him down to the third. So there's a lot of options. But moving on from that, Josh Norris, obviously, he might be out for the entire year. Just we didn't really mention that. Shoulder injury, not great. But like we just mentioned, a lot of options for Ottawa. But continuing on the conversation with Shane Pinto, 5 goals in 5 straight games, easily, in my opinion, the front runner for the Calder Trophy. What do you think?
Well, he's right up there. I mean, it's very early, right? And it's a long season, and let's see what happens. But he's just got it going right now. I mean, it's kind of like it's not if he's going to score, but when. And the other night he waited till the third period and he snipes that one top shelf. Like, he's scoring a lot of different ways. He can be the bumper guy on the power play. He can score 5-on-5. You can see why coaches love this guy. Like, he's good in the faceoff circle. For a young guy, he's just remarkably mature and a two-way player. Even in college, he was like that in North Dakota. Like, just one of those guys that didn't have to be reminded about playing defensive hockey. And that's where the game has changed so much, Brendan. When years ago, if you could score, that's all you were asked to do, really, was to score. And then maybe when you got in the pros and you got into the bigger games, you better learn some defense because the centermen have a checking role and down low to help the defenseman and all that kind of stuff. But it just comes second nature to him. And I said it last year when we first got a look at him in camp and in preseason. I said he's been here 5 weeks and he looks like he's been here 5 years. Like, he just has that aura about him. He's just a very confident kid, and it carries over onto the ice. And I think he's going to be in that Calder race all year, if not a front runner.
Well, you know what, that honestly reminds me of my analysis, I guess, on Jake Sanderson. Very comparable, of course. Both played at North Dakota. There's something about the NCAA. I've always said this. It really makes you much more ready for the NHL game because the physicality and the toughness and the competitiveness in the NCAA is up there with the NHL. Shane Pinto, his two-way game, I don't think enough people really, like you just said, speak about his defensive abilities. I mean, he's so strong in his own end. He's so strong through the middle. And I think, like you said, he will definitely be in that Calder conversation come February, come March, and come April. Now let's move on to the goaltending. I mean, Cam Talbot, Claire Hanna put out a tweet today. Talbot is taking shots for the first time in quite some time after that rib injury in preseason. So what do you think happens there? Obviously, Talbot and Forsberg are going to battle for that first, that number 1 goalie position. But Magnus Hellberg, he had a solid game in that win against Dallas the other day. What do they do with him? Is he sent down to the AHL? Is he kept here as the third goalie? What do you think?
Well, that's a good question. And I was at practice, so I also saw Cam Talbot taking some shots. And, we had a chance to ask the head coach about that. Does his timeline improve? He said he was as surprised as anyone to find out that the Talbot was cleared to practice today. So, when is he back? Is it early November? He said it's just a little too early to know. They'll wait and see. But that's an encouraging first sign. And what to do with Hellberg? I mean, that is a great question. I'm not sure they want to risk, certainly in the short term, sending this guy down because I don't think he clears waivers. I mean, do you? Seattle might take him back because they may realize that they let a guy go that that could fill a need for them. So we'll wait and see what happens. But I've got a feeling they'll maybe just carry 3 for a little while. And why not? Like the players love him already. The coaches love him, and he acts like he's been around here forever, and not just a few weeks. He's one of the guys, largest life, physical stature and largest life persona. Like he's a big, affable Swede, great personality, and he's been a great fit.
You don't have to say that again. He is very, very, very tall. And I absolutely agree with you. There's no way he clears waivers. I mean, right off the bat, Arizona, they have some goaltending issues. I mean, there's a lot of teams out there that can always use goaltending depth. Plus, of course, with the unfortunate news with Josh Norris going on the long-term injury reserve, I mean, that opens up a spot there as well. So they don't really have to really make any moves, I would believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they would have to. So you can keep Hellberg on, especially, look, I mean, Forsberg just dealt with a minor injury. Talbot is dealing with a major one. You need that stability, and you don't want to risk it. So I agree with you. I think Hellberg is probably going to stick around long term, and he's definitely not a negative, influence on the locker room as well. But it's great news to see Cam Talbot is back at practice, taking pucks, and I'm really excited to see him play. I said it on when I was joining the Locked On Sanders podcast, guys. I said it on my YouTube channel here as well. Cam Talbot, in my opinion, was the sneakiest and most important acquisition this offseason. You have every single night an opportunity to win with Forsberg and or Talbot in net. The playoffs come around, you can score as many goals as you want, but it all depends on the goalie and the crease if you're going to win games or not. So Talbot is huge. Very, very excited to see him play. Hopefully very soon, maybe even in early November. I was at the 2 out of the 4 games so far at home. The game experience, so much better. I'm sure you can agree with that. The atmosphere is great. The 100 section, the fans there. Usually the last few years, they would sit down and clap when they score. You see everyone on their feet, like in the 300s, 200s, and now 100s too. The fans are back into it. The game experience is great. And the Sounders are winning too, which always helps, of course. They've won 4 straight games at home, looking for 5 tonight against Minnesota. So all looks good. Offense is clicking. Defense is playing pretty well. Goaltending is performing. But what can be improved in your opinion?
Well, I mean, there's always something, right? I mean, there's stretches where they don't look great. They maybe didn't start great against Dallas, and but I think what's interesting, even though they have those stretches and they have those lapses where they're maybe running around, this is a team that used to maybe collapse with a lead, couldn't hang on, would maybe start strong and fade. But if you think about it, what's the tendency of a really good team, like maybe a Tampa Bay? They don't have to come out of the gate really strong to start a game because, most nights they're the best team on the ice, and they're going to show it in the second period and the third period. Suddenly we've got a Senators team that's one of the best third period teams in the NHL. I mean, they score in bunches, they defend well, they're protecting leads, all the things that you want out of a team that, wants to think of itself as a legitimate contender. So I think that's all good. So it's, I don't know if there's any particular shortcoming, but just continue to get out of the zone smartly, have more offensive zone time, which has kind of been the habit of this homestand. Continue to do that. It'll be a bigger challenge on the road, right? When you don't get the matchups that you want. And, we saw in Toronto and we saw in Buffalo, there were some times where they got outplayed in those games. They probably could have done better than an 0-2 record, but it was a little more of a challenge on the road. So, you've kind of showed, the template here. Can you do something similar on the road? And I think really, Brendan, just continue to grow as a group, get more mature, get more experienced, take the losses and the wins, just be calm about them and carry on. And I think that's all part of growth of a young hockey team.
I think the road point's a very, very important one. I mean, in that Toronto game, they lost by a couple goals, but they were there with Toronto throughout the entire game. And Buffalo, same thing. I mean, shout out to Craig Anderson, great guy, Senator legend, but he stood on his head. So I do agree with you, and I am very interested to see if this offense continues, in these road games. I mean, like you said, the matchups are so important. That really has helped the Ottawa Senators at home. Let's see how they do on the road. I would mention, though, that the penalty kill has not been the greatest. I mean, every single game, they seem to allow a power play goal or two. I think they're 26th in the NHL in penalty kill percentage. So that's something I would improve. Luckily, offense trumps defense and, these type of power play goals sometimes, but eventually that will catch up to you. So I think that's somewhere they can improve. But, DJ Smith, through tough years, always had a solid PK, system, and I think that will be fixed eventually. We kind of touched up on this earlier when we were talking about centers and Josh Norris and Pinto and all these guys, the great depth that we have down the middle. But Mark Kastelic today, 2-year contract extension, well-deserved. This guy really, really worked hard. 5th round pick, looked like a long shot. Now, for sure, NHL centerman for the 4th line. What are your thoughts on this deal?
Well, who doesn't love a story like this, right? Like the first and second rounders, it feels like they get everything handed to them. I mean, they do have to prove themselves, but the expectations are there. The team's going to give them every opportunity. 5th round guys can just kind of disappear into the woodwork. And Mark Kastelic, just a very determined hockey player. Every summer, he's worked on some element of his game. And he talked this morning when we talked to him after signing that contract about the work that he did on skating with Shelley Kettles, the power skating coach. So, and you could see the improvement, right? You can see that this is a guy that's getting around the rink a bit better. We know he's big and strong. We know he can handle himself. And then 70% in the faceoff circle is just crazy. He's just overpowering people in the faceoff circle. For a 4th round guy, a 4th line guy to be out, he's out there. I'm sure you've noticed because you watch the games. He's out there for strategic faceoffs. Like he's out there to take defensive zone draws and then get off the ice and maybe in a PK or whatever it is, they clear the zone, he goes off. So, I mean, that's a real testament to the work that he's put in at 23. He's already a guy that DJ Smith can rely on in a lot of situations.
Yeah. Before the season started, I did a 4-season preview video. And, Mark Kastelic was a shoo-in from the beginning for me. I know a lot of people, and, kind of looks weird saying this now, but at the beginning of camp, a lot of people kind of penciled in Parker Kelly as a guy that could be on the 4C or Dylan Gambrell. But Mark Kastelic in a short stint last year, I mean, he had a 55-60% face-off win percentage. That certainly has not changed, like you just said, with 70%. This guy is the complete package. It's exactly what you want from your bottom 6. A guy that can score, bring energy, win face-offs, play well defensively, physicality. I mean, he's the whole package for a bottom 6. And this 2-year contract extension, I mean, on a good clip too, $850,000 a year. I mean, it's a great deal for Ottawa. Very excited for him. And hey, he gets to buy a home and stay here long term. So it's a win-win for both guys, huh? What would you say?
Oh, absolutely. No, that's a great deal for both. It's to have a guy that's on your 4th line, under $1 million. Like, come on. I mean, it's fantastic. And he's the guy that drives that line.
Yes.
You mentioned Parker Kelly, Austin Watson on the other side, and there have been times during this homestand, as well as the team has played, there's been some lulls where that line has gone out and made some noise. Yeah. I'm remembering one game where they just sent like 3 guys flying. It was like each one of them knocked somebody flying on the same shift, and it just energized the whole bench. It's like, holy smokes, do you see that? And they're playing good. They're playing good, smart hockey and actually creating some chances for themselves. So, I think as a unit they've been tremendous, and he's really the driving force.
And most importantly, last year we saw it, like, for example, when Aaron Dell took out Drake Batherson, not one fight happened that game. Unbelievable, in my opinion. This 4th line will not let people take advantage of our team. They will throw the gloves down and potentially knock you out. I mean, Mark Kastelic can definitely throw them. Parker Kelly's not afraid, and Austin Watson has always done that. So the 4th line is pesky, brings energy, and scores some goals. It's your classic standard 4th line, and you absolutely love to see it. Now, before we wrap it up here, Wayne, I know you're busy. I just want to ask you, look, this has been a great start, 0-2 to start the year, 4-2 now, 4 straight wins at home, looking for 5 tonight against Minnesota. So far things look great. We've kind of mentioned a couple of things that they can improve on, but overall it looks very good. Where do you see this team going into the Christmas break?
I think they're going to be right there. I mean, the Atlantic Division is tough, as you know. Most of the teams in that group got off to a good start. There was a point where every team was 500 or better, right, in the Atlantic. I expect that to continue, but that's good. I mean, I think that'll sharpen them up and make Ottawa a better team as a result. All those games are going to be important. Even teams like Montreal that you don't really consider as a playoff contender, they're playing with some energy and they're playing well for Martin St. Louis. So Detroit is better, but definitely Buffalo is improved. Boston doesn't seem to be going anywhere, and of course you got Tampa and Florida, and Ottawa's got games upcoming against them. So I think it's very exciting for a Senators fan to realize that this team, they can go toe to toe with the best in the division, and that's going to help sharpen them up. I believe it's the playoff team. I really do. I think barring some setbacks, maybe further injuries, something unforeseen, I think this team's going to be right there to the end. I can see them being buyers at the deadline and getting stronger. And who knows? We could be seeing some playoff hockey in the spring for the first time since 2017. I mean, fingers crossed, things have to go well. But I think it's going to be a fun season, no matter how you look at it.
Absolutely agree. And I think the defense has played a huge part. We kind of briefly touched on it, but Jake Sanderson, the emergence of him, Eric Brandstrom, especially, these guys are really helping the bottom two pairings, which was a big concern going into the year. But now that looks solidified. The forward core, we've mentioned it many, many times. The depth there is incredible. And then at goaltending, I mean, you have a three-headed monster, I guess you can call it here, of Talbot, Forsberg, and Hellberg, worst case, if you need a guy to fill in. So Ottawa in all aspects of the roster look very, very good. And it's great to see. After a few years of tough times, it's great to see the Senators have finally, appears to anyway, have switched the course and are looking towards potentially the playoffs. Wayne, always great to speak to you. We'll have to have you on again soon. Where can everyone that's watching this right now read your stuff and follow you?
Well, I'm on sportsnet.ca. Been there for the past 4 years after a long career at the Ottawa Citizen. So that's where you'll find me. And you know what? Sportsnet's a national entity, and they're a lot more excited about the Senators, and it's fun.
Yeah,
they like to follow all the Canadian teams, and it's great when the Canadian teams are contending, and it's looking like, certainly in the East, Ottawa's going to be a factor, and that's great for everybody, and including someone writing for a national website like that.
absolutely. And I have to say this, I mean, as a Blue Jays fan, oh boy, it's like watching the Blue Jays all over again with this team. I mean, the Atlantic Division is like the AL East. It's unbelievable. Every team has a shot, so it should be a fun year. So Wayne, we'll have to have you on again soon to chat. Hopefully we'll be talking playoffs next time we speak. Always a pleasure. Make sure to read his stuff, sportsnet.ca. Wayne, always a pleasure. Thanks again.
Thank you, Brennan. My pleasure.